The American South is usually remembered for Civil War battlefields, old plantations, blues music, and cities shaped by centuries of struggle. But beneath that familiar history runs another story, quieter and far less known: the story of Catholic faith in the southern United States. Here, shrines have survived fire and disaster. Exiles have carried Marian devotions across the sea. Families have traveled with desperate prayers, and places once marked by suffering have become destinations of hope. These are more than beautiful churches. They are living Catholic pilgrimage sites shaped by survival, sacrifice, healing, the Eucharist, and devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary and the saints. In this journey through the top 10 Catholic shrines in the southern United States, we will uncover the stories that made these sacred places unforgettable, including one shrine that pilgrims refused to abandon even after the church itself was destroyed. Subscribe to the channel and join us as we discover the Catholic places, history, and traditions still shaping America. Number 10. Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, Atlanta, Georgia. When much of Atlanta was being destroyed in 1864, one Catholic priest refused to watch his church disappear with the city. Father Thomas O'Reilly appealed directly to Union authorities and helped protect the Church of the Immaculate Conception, along with several nearby houses of worship, from the fires ordered during General William T. Sherman's campaign. The small wooden Catholic church survived, while large sections of Atlanta burned around it. The Gothic Revival building standing here now came after the war. Construction began in 1869, and the new church was dedicated 4 years later as Atlanta rebuilt itself from the ruins. Its pointed arches, brick walls, tall windows, and twin towers gave the growing Catholic community a permanent presence in a city where Catholics were still a minority. But survival became part of this place more than once. As downtown Atlanta lost residents during the 20th century, the parish declined so sharply that selling the property was considered. Instead, the church was restored and became the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in 1954. Then, in 1982, an electrical fire devastated much of the interior. The sanctuary was rebuilt again, and the shrine reopened 2 years later. Its strongest story, however, is still unfolding outside the history books. Mass continues here in the middle of downtown Atlanta, while St. Francis Table and other outreach ministries provide food and assistance to people in need. On Saturday mornings, hundreds can pass through the same doors that generations of Catholics fought to keep open. Surrounded now by office towers, government buildings, and traffic, the shrine has outlived war, population loss, and fire. Yet, perhaps its most powerful sign of survival is much simpler. After more than a century and a half, those doors are still opening. Number 9. International Shrine of St. Jude, New Orleans, Louisiana. Long before people came here asking St. Jude for help with desperate causes, they came carrying coffins. In 1826, the building now known as Our Lady of Guadalupe Church was constructed as the mortuary chapel of St. Anthony of Padua. Yellow fever repeatedly struck New Orleans, and at the time, many people feared that transporting the dead through crowded streets could spread the disease. Funeral services were therefore moved away from St. Louis Cathedral, and this chapel was built near St. Louis Cemetery to receive the dead before burial. Its earliest purpose was not pilgrimage, but death. The building passed through several chapters of Catholic New Orleans before its identity changed dramatically in the 20th century. Italian Catholics worshipped here. The missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate arrived in 1918. Then, during the 1930s, parishioners began gathering to pray to St. Jude Thaddeus, the apostle traditionally invoked by Catholics in desperate situations. Their devotion grew into regular novenas, and eventually, an international shrine of St. Jude was established inside the church, containing a relic of the saint. That history gives the interior an unusual emotional weight. The shrine itself occupies a space to the left of the altar, while the wider church remains an active inner-city Catholic parish. People do not come only to study its past. They arrive carrying intentions for illness, family crises, uncertain futures, and situations that seem to have reached a dead end. The devotion is still active rather than ceremonial. 4 major St. Jude novenas are held each year in January, April, July, and October, with repeated masses and novena prayers throughout each cycle. During the autumn novena, the schedule even includes the anointing of the sick after Friday Masses. More than 2 centuries after this building first opened near a cemetery, the crowds gathering inside are no longer funeral processions. When the next novena begins, they will once again come through its doors carrying prayers that have nowhere else to go. Number 8. Basilica of the National Shrine of Mary, Queen of the Universe, Orlando, Florida. In the 1970s, some Catholic families visiting Orlando found themselves attending Sunday Mass in hotel ballrooms. Walt Disney World had opened, tourism was exploding across Central Florida, and thousands of Catholic vacationers were arriving every week. They might have been away from home, but Sunday Mass still mattered. Father Joseph Hart began expanding ministry to these visitors in 1975, celebrating Masses in hotels around the tourist district. The crowds kept growing, and temporary spaces could no longer provide the kind of permanent Catholic presence the area needed. In 1979, land was purchased near Walt Disney World for something far more ambitious, a shrine dedicated to Mary, Queen of the Universe. The main church was dedicated in 1993, with room for roughly 2,000 worshippers. It later became a national shrine, and Pope Benedict XVI granted it the title of Minor Basilica in 2009. Yet its identity is very different from shrines built around ancient relics or reported apparitions. This one grew from a modern pastoral need. Catholics traveling far from home still wanted the Eucharist, prayer, and a sacred place of their own. Inside, the vast sanctuary draws attention toward the altar and Blessed Sacrament. Outside, visitors can move through the Rosary Garden, sacred art, landscaped grounds, and spaces designed for quiet prayer. The newer Gospel Gardens add monumental Stations of the Cross depicting the Passion of Christ. Only a short distance from some of the busiest attractions in America, this basilica offers the opposite experience: less noise, fewer distractions, and time centered on faith. Its entire story began because Catholic families on vacation refused to treat Sunday as just another day on the itinerary. Number 7. National Shrine Cathedral of Our Lady of Guadalupe, Dallas, Texas. Every December, downtown Dallas changes around this cathedral. Mattachines dance to pounding drums, mariachi music fills the celebration, flowers are carried toward Our Lady of Guadalupe, and pilgrims arrive for days of masses and prayer surrounding her feast. The Diocese of Dallas says tens of thousands make their way here during the annual celebrations, from December 4th through December 12th. That living devotion explains why an important change came in 2023. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops granted the cathedral national shrine status, giving it the name it carries now, the National Shrine Cathedral of Our Lady of Guadalupe. For Catholics from Mexico and across Latin America, it had already been a major place of pilgrimage in North Texas. The new designation recognized a devotion that had long outgrown the boundaries of a single parish or city. The setting makes the contrast even sharper. Its cornerstone was laid in 1898, and the cathedral was dedicated in 1902. Red brick, limestone, stained glass, Gothic revival arches, and a soaring tower stand among the modern buildings of downtown Dallas. Yet the strongest energy here comes from the community filling that historic structure, not simply from the architecture. Our Lady of Guadalupe, patroness of the Americas, has become a powerful spiritual bridge between the cathedral's history and the Catholic population it serves. The life of the shrine moves naturally between English and Spanish, with weekday Mass offered in English at noon and in Spanish during the evening. Long after the feast day drums have stopped, that rhythm continues. At noon, the cathedral receives worshippers for Mass in English. Hours later, another congregation gathers for Mass in Spanish beneath the same Gothic arches and before the same altar. Number 6. National Shrine of Our Lady of Charity, Miami, Florida. On September 8, 1961, An image of Our Lady of Charity arrived in Miami from Guadalupe Parish in Havana. That same night, it was carried before more than 30,000 Cuban exiles gathered for Mass at Miami Stadium. Many had recently left their homeland with little certainty that they would ever return. Suddenly, the patroness of Cuba was standing before them on American soil. 5 years later, Archbishop Coleman Carroll asked the Cuban community to build a permanent shrine and donated land beside Biscayne Bay. The money did not come from a wealthy benefactor. Exiles working in factories, restaurants, farms, and homes contributed what they could, sometimes literally pennies at a time. Those small offerings helped raise the sanctuary that was dedicated in 1973. Even the building carries their story. Its sweeping form was designed to evoke the mantle of the Virgin, sheltering the people beneath it. Inside, a vast mural places Our Lady of Charity at the center of Cuban history. Beneath the altar lies an even more haunting detail. Soil from Cuba mixed with water brought on a raft on which 15 people died while trying to escape the island. In 2000, the United States bishops officially designated the site the National Shrine of Our Lady of Charity. The location beside Biscayne Bay was never incidental. For generations of Cuban exiles, the water beyond the shrine pointed toward a homeland that remained physically close yet painfully unreachable. Even now, pilgrims can leave the sanctuary, step toward the bay, and look across the same sea that separates Miami from Cuba. Number 5. National Votive Shrine of Our Lady of Prompt Succor, New Orleans, Louisiana. When a hurricane moves toward Louisiana, Catholics in New Orleans still turn to a prayer that has echoed here for generations. Our Lady of Prompt Succor, hasten to help us. The title means a Mary who comes quickly to aid, and few Marian devotions in the American South are tied so closely to moments when an entire city feared what might happen next. The Archdiocese of New Orleans continues to promote prayers, invoking her protection during hurricane season. The devotion began with Mother Saint Michel Gensoul in France. After receiving unexpectedly swift permission from Pope Pius VII to join the Ursulines in Louisiana, she fulfilled a promise to honor Mary under the title Our Lady of Prompt Succor. She arrived in New Orleans with the statue in 1810. Soon, the title became linked to crisis. Ursuline tradition records that when fire threatened the convent in 1812, the sisters prayed before the image and the wind changed direction. 3 years later, with British forces approaching New Orleans, sisters and residents prayed through the night. On January 8, 1815, while Mass was being offered, news arrived that Andrew Jackson's forces had defeated the British at Chalmette. The Ursulines had promised an annual Mass of Thanksgiving if the city were spared, and that Mass is still celebrated every January 8th. The devotion eventually received an extraordinary distinction. In 1928, the Holy See confirmed Our Lady of Prompt Succor as the principal patroness of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana. Her crown statue now stands above the main altar of the National Shrine on State Street. But this shrine does not belong only to battles and old legends. When storms gather over the Gulf, the old invocation returns to Catholic churches across the region. More than 2 centuries after the Ursulines first prayed it in desperation, Louisiana still knows exactly when to say, Our Lady of Prompt Succor, hasten to help us. Number 4. National Shrine of Blessed Francis Xavier Seelos, New Orleans, Louisiana. Francis Xavier Seelos had been in New Orleans for less than a year when yellow fever began spreading through the city in September of 1867. As pastor of St. Mary's Assumption Church, the Redemptorist priest kept visiting the sick and caring for people struck by the epidemic until exhaustion caught up with him. He contracted yellow fever himself and died on October 4th at just 48 years old. The Vatican later remembered him as a priest especially devoted to the poor, the abandoned, and those who came to him for spiritual guidance. His ministry in New Orleans had been brief, but his reputation for holiness did not disappear with his death. The national shrine that now bears his name stands at St. Mary's Assumption Church and preserves his remains, his original lead coffin, personal artifacts, and first-class relics. Pilgrims come especially with prayers connected to sickness, healing, and difficult circumstances. One case eventually carried his name all the way to Rome. In 1966, Angela Boudreau, a mother of 4 diagnosed with terminal liver cancer, was told she had only weeks to live. On her way home from the hospital, she prayed at Seelos' grave and received a blessing with his missionary cross. Despite the severity of her condition, she later made a complete recovery. After years of investigation, her healing was accepted as the miracle attributed to Seelos' intercession that opened the way for his beatification. St. John Paul II declared Francis Xavier Seelos blessed in St. Peter's Square on April 9, 2000. His cause has not stopped there. Church officials continue examining reported favors attributed to his intercession because one more approved miracle could open the final step toward canonization. Number 3. Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament, Hanceville, Alabama. Silence takes over quickly at Hanceville. Beyond the long approach through rural Alabama, the massive church opens into a sanctuary where nearly everything draws the eye toward one place: the Blessed Sacrament. The Poor Clares of Perpetual Adoration live beside the shrine, maintaining a life centered on prayer before the Eucharist, including hours of adoration through the night. That focus was built into the shrine from the beginning. Mother Angelica, founder of Eternal Word Television Network, originally searched for rural land because the expanding television network in Irondale was making contemplative monastic life increasingly difficult. After finding property in Hanceville in 1995, she initially envisioned a much simpler monastery and chapel. The plan changed after a trip to Colombia the following year. Mother Angelica later recounted that while praying before an image of the divine child Jesus, she experienced him telling her to build a temple. What followed was far larger than the original project. 5 families helped finance a Romanesque Gothic complex inspired by 13th century Franciscan churches and monasteries in Italy, and the shrine was dedicated in 1999. Inside, marble from several countries covers the floors and sanctuary. A towering hand-carved cedar reredos rises behind the altar, framing the tabernacle and the enormous monstrance used for Eucharistic adoration. Yet the architecture is deliberately secondary to the shrine's central purpose: worship of Christ truly present in the Eucharist. That purpose remains very much alive. During the National Eucharistic Pilgrimage in 2024, perpetual pilgrims on the Juan Diego route stopped here for a 4-day silent retreat after a month on the road. They had crossed cities and highways carrying the Blessed Sacrament across America. In Hanceville, the journey paused for something completely different: silence. Number 2. National Shrine of Our Lady of La Leche, St. Augustine, Florida. Some pilgrims arrive here carrying ultrasound images. Others bring the name of a child they hope to have, while some come after miscarriage or loss, searching for a place to pray when words are difficult. For centuries, families have turned to Our Lady of La Leche with petitions surrounding pregnancy, childbirth, infertility, children, and the fragile hopes that come with parenthood. Those prayers unfold on some of the oldest Catholic ground in the United States. Spanish settlers landed at St. Augustine in 1565, where Father Francisco Lopez celebrated Mass shortly after their arrival. The devotion to Nuestra Señora de la Leche y Buen Parto, Our Lady of the Milk and Happy Delivery, reached Spanish Florida in the early 17th century. Around 1677, a shrine dedicated to her was established at Mission Nombre de Dios, creating what the shrine identifies as the oldest Marian shrine in what is now the United States. The chapel is intimate rather than monumental. Inside is the tender image of Mary nursing the infant Jesus, presenting motherhood not as an abstract symbol, but as something physical, vulnerable, and deeply human. Couples pray for children. Expectant mothers ask for protection and safe delivery. Parents return with babies once prayed for, while families carrying grief seek consolation before the same image. Church recognition has followed centuries of devotion. The United States bishops designated the site a national shrine in 2019. 2 years later, the image of Mary and the child Jesus received a canonical coronation an honor originally granted under Pope Benedict XVI and celebrated in 2021 with a papal envoy representing Pope Francis. It became only the fourth image in the United States to receive that distinction. Yet some of the most memorable things here remain much smaller than crowns or ceremonies. Pilgrims still leave written petitions, light candles, and sometimes return carrying in their arms the child whose name once appeared only in a prayer. Number 1. Basilica of Our Lady of San Juan del Valle. National Shrine, San Juan, Texas. The most extraordinary chapter at San Juan del Valle began after there was almost no shrine left to visit. On October 23, 1970, Mass was underway when a suicidal pilot drove a light aircraft into the shrine. Fire tore through the building, leaving the church devastated. The pilot died, yet no one inside the shrine was killed. As flames spread, Father Patricio Dominguez and sacristan Pedro Rodriguez rescued the beloved statue of Our Lady of San Juan, while Father Ron Anderson carried the Blessed Sacrament to safety. But destruction produced an unexpected result. The Marian image was temporarily placed in the shrine dining hall, and devotion continued even without the church that had once housed it. Instead of simply rebuilding what had been lost, the diocese moved towards something larger. A new shrine rose on adjacent land. Its cornerstone was laid in 1976, and 4 years later, roughly 50,000 people gathered for its dedication. The present basilica was created to receive pilgrims on a completely different scale. Its vast sanctuary, pilgrimage grounds, stations of the cross, Marian imagery, and bilingual Catholic life reflect the Rio Grande Valley itself, where devotion to Our Lady of San Juan carries deep ties to Mexican Catholic tradition. The shrine became a national shrine in 1998, and St. John Paul II raised it to the rank of minor basilica the following year. More than 1 million pilgrims now visit annually, and that enormous basilica still traces its modern story back to one afternoon when almost everything visible was lost. The aircraft destroyed the old shrine, but it failed to stop the people coming to San Juan. More than half a century later, they are still coming. Our journey through these 10 Catholic shrines in the southern United States has revealed very different expressions of faith. A church that survived the fires of war in Atlanta, a shrine that once stood beside the victims of epidemic in New Orleans, and a Texas pilgrimage site that rose again after devastating destruction. These sacred places are more than remarkable architecture or historic landmarks. They carry generations of prayers, sacrifice, grief, healing, and hope, while remaining active places of Catholic faith and pilgrimage. If you could visit only one shrine from this list, which would you choose first? Share your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoy discovering the hidden history, sacred places, and living traditions of the Catholic Church, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you can join us on the next journey. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.